Well, good afternoon. Before I begin, I want to address the Long-Term Care Commission report that I expect to see later today. As difficult as it may be, as hard as it might be to read, I fully welcome this report. Because what happened in our long-term care homes, it was tragic and it was terrible. But most of all, it can never be allowed to happen again. That's why I personally commissioned this report, to get answers, to bring the long-standing problems to light, to do everything in my power to make sure that there is justice and answers for family members. Because our best hope of fixing it is bringing these stories to light. And I could stand here and point to all the problems that I inherited. I could point to 30 years of underinvestment from government after government, liberal and conservative, but none of that matters because I'm your premier today. And I don't want them to look back 20 years and say that we could have done more. So I will not stand here and try to make excuses or pass the blame, but I will stand here and tell you that I'm doing everything in my power as premier, and I'm sparing no expense to fix the system, to upgrade the homes that have been neglected for decades, to make the biggest single investment in the standard of care for our residents in a generation. I'm doing everything in my power to deliver better homes, better facilities, and most importantly, better care. Because we need to look to the future. We need to make sure that we keep up the fight against this deadly virus, that we don't let down our guard for a moment. Because I am as happy as you about the news of more vaccines. We hit 5 million vaccines yesterday, and I'm happy that I can tell you that by the end of today, we will have administered the first vaccine to 40% of Ontario adults. This is great news. It's news we've all been waiting for. But as difficult as it is, we can't take anything for granted right now. We need to be more vigilant than ever. Because this virus, it is changing. It is mutating. It is becoming more deadly. It is becoming smarter. And God forbid, we could one day soon face a variant that is resistant to our vaccines, because we're learning about our terrifying new variants every single week. And sadly, not enough is being done to keep these deadly variants out of Canada. Last week, the new Indian variant was reported here in Ontario, and it didn't swim here, I can tell you that. In fact, we learned yesterday that 90% of average daily cases this week are variants of concern. The same variants that fueled our devastating third wave. And they got in because of weak border measures. I can't stress this enough. We will never get ahead of this virus if we can't keep these deadly new variants out of our country. The borders, land and air, they're federal jurisdiction. And I assure you, if I had the power, I would close down Pearson Airport immediately. I would shut down the land border crossings to only those who are absolutely essential. Because I would do everything in my power to stop a vaccine-resistant variant from getting into our country and bringing a fourth wave with it. Last night, I was on a call with my fellow premiers and the Prime Minister. I once again pleaded with them to do more, to tighten the airports, to bring in mandatory pre-departure testing for those flying into Ontario from other provinces. And most importantly, to close the massive loopholes at our land border with the United States by bringing in a mandatory hotel quarantine for those major land crossings. Because too many people are exploiting these weak measures at our land border to get around the hotel quarantine. I want to thank our incredible border protection officers. These people are true heroes. They're doing everything in their power to keep our country safe, and I fully support them. The problem is with the measures in place, because as long as you can fly to Buffalo, take a taxi or a limo to the US border, and walk across to Canada to avoid having to quarantine in a hotel, as long as these massive loopholes exist, we're not safe from these new variants. And I will not let this issue go because too much is at stake. Because I was the one who had to close our schools, close our businesses, tell you to stay at home when the last variants got into the country earlier this year. And I will do everything in my power as Premier. I will use every tool I have to make sure the action we need is taken. To make sure I don't have to stand here one day soon and tell you that we face a fourth wave fueled by a vaccine-resistant variant. We just can't let that happen. And I told the Prime Minister last night, I will work with him. I will do everything I can to support him with doing the right thing. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. I'd be happy to take questions.
Okay, Premier, your first question comes from Christina Tenalia with CP24. Christina, if you can unmute your mic.
Hi there, Premier. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thanks, Premier. Yes, thank you, Premier. So, Premier, on former Finance Minister Rod Phillips, you said on December the 30th, he never told anyone he was leaving. He never told me he was leaving, is what you said. You also said on December 30th that when you found out about the trip 2 weeks before, you should have told him to return home right away. Now, as you know, emails indicate your office knew as early as December the 4th. So, Premier, when did you know and what did you know?
Well, I can tell you exactly the same as what I told you before. The first time I found out was when I talked to him. And, I said back then, I regret not telling him to come home, which I did shortly thereafter. But, with Rod, he made a mistake. He apologized. He stepped up. And he's no longer in cabinet as a result of that mistake. Rod's working hard for the people of Ajax. He's going to continue working hard. And, he again, admitted his mistake and paid the price.
Follow up? Christina, you'll have to unmute again.
Thank you so much for that. Premier, on what I was saying is you're clearly isolating at home at this time.
Yes.
On taxpayer, on sick days, you are on taxpayer paid sick days right now. The Ontario Science Table says Ontarians need 10 paid sick days. You're offering 3. When Steny Brown was asked yesterday if 3 paid sick days is enough to drive COVID-19 cases down enough to bring Ontario into a best case scenario, he replied with a firm no. So why do you think your plan will create any impact in tackling this pandemic this late in the game? And in saying that, I'm wondering if you can clarify where you've been the last week. Thank you.
Well, I've been here and I've been on the phone all day from 7 in the morning doing conferences, working as usual. The only difference is I'm here opposed to Queen's Park. But let me just clarify this. I want to make sure this message is very, very clear. We closed the bridge, the gap, as we called it, 3 days at $200 a day. So that's a total of $600. We also have on the table to increase the federal government payment, which was basically below minimum wage. And we're acting and we're asking them, and we'll pay for it, not the federal government, up to $500 additional dollars, which will be $1,000 a week for 4 weeks. So that's now $25 an hour, opposed to under minimum wage that the federal government was offering. So let me just run through that. That's 3 days at $200, up to $200, which will cover the gap. And then on top of that, we're offering $500 a week for 4 weeks, which is $2,000 on top of the federal government's $2,000. So that's $4,600, up to $4,600 if the federal government can work with the program that we have. So that hopefully will get people over the hump until they can feel better and get back to work.
Your next question comes from Lorenda Redekop with CBC.
Lorenda.
Hi there, Premier. All the recent polls are showing that the majority of voters are dissatisfied with how you're handling the pandemic. What are you going to try to do to convince them that you are doing a good job?
Well, I'll tell you, continue working hard, making sure that I do my job to make sure these variants don't come in through the border, work with the federal government. Lorenda, the 90% of our cases right now, you go back to the variants. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we keep our borders closed and work with the federal government to make sure they don't come in. I'm going to make sure I continue working hard to get people vaccinated. And, you know, I think the whole country has seen we didn't have enough vaccines. Now in May, we're going to have quite a few vaccines. We're going to continue getting needles into people's arms and continue working until we can crush this virus once and for all. But we won't stop working. And I want to thank everyone out there, anyone that's putting needles into people's arms or helping out at the vaccination centers. I want to thank all the pharmacists for doing a great job. We still have a long ways to go. We vaccinated 40% before the time frame, before the end of the lockdown period. So everyone's working hard. We're going to continue working hard.
Follow-up?
Why did your government appoint Norm Sterling to head the Greenbelt Council, someone who voted against creating the Greenbelt and then whose cuts to the environment ministry were later linked to the Walkerton E. coli tragedy?
Well, again, I would talk to the Minister of Environment about that, but we're putting together a good plan for the environment. We're going to invest over $1 billion to make sure that, you know, the emissions from the cars will eventually stop, because we'll be the #1 manufacturer of battery operated cars in North America. We're the only government that is actually expanding the expanding the Greenbelt. Compared to the last government for 15 years, they changed the Greenbelt 17 times for their developer buddies. I'm not doing that. I'm not touching the Greenbelt. I've said that from the beginning. We haven't, and we're going to continue down that track.
Your next question comes from Harrison Lohman with TVO.
Hi, Harrison.
Hi there, Premier. A few days ago, Prime Minister Trudeau was asked if there was anything about his government's vaccine procurement approach that he thought, in retrospect, was a mistake. He said no. His response to this virus will clearly be a massive part of both your political legacies. And I'm wondering, looking back, is there anything about your provincial government's vaccination rollout that you think was a significant mistake?
Well, we needed more vaccines. And if you're asking me about the people putting needles into people's arms, they're doing an incredible job. People stepped up, hospitals stepped up, public health units stepped up, you know, paramedics stepped up, firefighters stepped up. Everyone stepped up to help out. If you're asking me, would things be different if we weren't 45th in the world or 50th, whatever it was? Yeah, it'd be different. If you're asking me, you know, if we had tighter border measures at the borders, land and air, would it be different? Absolutely, it would be different. Put that into perspective. In the last 2 weeks, 150,000 people came through our land borders in Canada. 36,000 a month are coming through the airports. All I'm asking, and it's not a criticism, it's work with us. We need tougher restrictions. It's not just about the foreign students coming here. It's about having 2 sets of rules that the federal government's put down. There's one set of rule if you fly in and you have to quarantine in a hotel. And by the way, people aren't doing that, just to you know, let you in on that one. And going to one of the land borders that people are driving up and getting out and walking across their border. I talked to a taxi driver the other day. They had 400 cars, you know, down at the border picking people up. The system is broken. All I'm asking the federal government to stop the variants from coming in. And these are deadly variants. 90% of all cases are related right back to our variants. The most deadly variant that we've seen from one case, the UK variant, was Roberta Place in Barrie. One person that was quarantining, was living with another person, went in there, and there was 200 cases, and unfortunately, tragically, close to 100 people lost their lives because of the variants. You know, put it this way: if the borders were safe, the system would be working. I can tell you, and I think everyone can see, it's not working. You know, the borders are broken. We need to fix it, and I'm willing to work with the federal government to make sure we fix it and stop the variants from coming into our province.
Follow up.
Premier, the leader of the official opposition, NDP leader Andrea Horwath, she told our show the other day on the agenda that she had yet to meet with you during this pandemic. We're now over a year into this thing, and that could potentially be a moment where she could give her party's input on how to beat back COVID-19. I know you've said repeatedly that you need a Team Ontario approach to beat back this virus, and I'm wondering if you see any benefit in meeting with opposition leaders to sort of combine knowledge and make it part of your planning.
Actually, at the beginning of this, this pandemic, we did sit down and we chatted, and then we called it for another meeting. She didn't bother showing up, and another meeting never showed up. Send someone else. So, you know something, I'm willing to work with anyone. I want to work with anyone. It's easy to sit back in opposition benches and criticize. I'm on the front lines. A lot of people are on the front lines. And, the federal NDP leader actually was echoing what I've been saying for months about the borders. You know, that's what it comes down to. The federal government needs to tighten up the borders. Now we have more vaccines in May, coming in May, and we're going to get them into people's arms. So we're going to work closely with the federal government. We're going to work closely with our municipalities, and we're going to get through this.
Your next question comes from Cynthia Mulligan with City News.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Premier. I'd like to circle back to essential workers, because we know that a lot of spread is coming from the workplaces. And yesterday, Dr. Steiny Brown made it quite clear that he doesn't necessarily, in the science table, doesn't necessarily agree with some choices that your government made. They say sick days need to be more. They also say 50% of vaccines going into hotspot areas where a lot of essential workers are, that they need to be extended beyond the 2 weeks that your government will divert them for 6 weeks. What is your response to that? And yet again, it seems like you're not listening to the science advisory table.
Well, again, let me put this into perspective. I had a long chat with Dr. Brown the other night. We had a good conversation with Cabinet with Dr. Brown. I appreciate everything that the science table is doing. They also, there's two parts to this. I also listen to the medical advisors, the CEOs of hospitals, and most importantly, my chief medical officer. And as for the sick days, I just ran through it, how we want to double up what the federal government's doing. We're filling the gap, and the total is $4,600, up to $4,600. And I think that's fair for a lot of people to get them over the hump. As for the workplace, where these variants coming in? Well, the variants within the workplace, Cynthia, are coming from the borders, our porous borders that are coming in. That people, you see it on your own news, that hundreds and hundreds of people are trying to buck the system and walk across the border, and they don't have to quarantine. You can't have two sets of rules. You can't have the set of rules for the people that are flying into the airport, another totally set of rules at the land borders. We're going to continue focusing on getting 50% of the vaccines, and after 2 weeks, we'll see how it goes. And we're also focusing on targeting high priority neighborhoods, or hot areas, if you want to call them. We're going into companies, a tremendous amount of companies with the mobile vaccine units, and vaccinating these employers.
Follow up.
Thank you, Premier. My other question to you is, the last time we saw you from the backyard, from isolation, you promised the best paid sick day program in all of North America. We know California offers more. Quebec and PEI, they have fewer days, but they're permanent. They're not temporary. Was that just an overblown promise, Premier?
Well, no, let's go back to what you just said. Quebec doesn't have a better sick day program. We're offering and that's no knock against Quebec, because I love Premier Legault, but we're offering up to $500 a week for 4 weeks. So it brings the federal government was offering minimum wage at $500. We're doubling that. So that brings it up another $2,000 and another $600. So I don't know, maybe you can show me anyone who's offering $4,600 a month. We've looked into it. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it across the country either.
Your last questions come from Laura Stone with the Globe and Mail.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking our questions. I just want to go back to the Rod Phillips issue. I don't understand how an email can be sent to your chief of staff. Your very top staff are saying the minister is going to be away. He's not in Toronto, and he won't be available in person for 5 weeks. I mean, how does that not set off red flags? And how is it possible that no one told you that?
Well, we have 72 members at Christmas. Everyone decides to either go to a cottage, maybe travel, but no one ever told me. And I can tell you, no one told me that he's leaving the country. When I found out, I addressed it with the media. And if there's one area that I wish I could have changed is when he called me. I should have told him to get back, but shortly thereafter, when I called him again, I asked him to come back. And he paid for that mistake. And he's going to continue working hard for the people of Ajax.
Follow up?
Okay, I thought people weren't supposed to travel at that time. I mean, you were telling people don't even have Christmas dinner with your family. So how can a minister leave the country without delegating power to someone? What does that say about your office? Have you changed anything? And also, can you clarify or tell the public if you're considering putting Mr. Phillips back in cabinet?
Well, first of all, I don't discuss any cabinet moves with anyone. And as for going back to that, again, Rod Phillips made a mistake. He didn't say in that letter that he was traveling anywhere, and I didn't see that. We have 73 members, and we're going to continue working hard for the people of, or I should say, Rod's going to continue working hard for the people of Ajax, and so will we. But again, he paid for that mistake. He was a finance minister. He's no longer the finance minister.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.